Today we are going to talk about 8.2. The goal is I can compute tax, tip, and commission problems. The warm-up had you think about those three words, tax, tip, and commission. The first question was, what are taxes? Now you may have heard this word before. I don't know how familiar you are with this, but taxes are a percent of what you make or spend that goes to the government. There are different types even of taxes. There are taxes at the local level. There are also state taxes, and then there are federal taxes. A lot of times the most common ones that you'll probably see are sales tax when you buy food or clothing or anything like that. The next term we're going to talk about are tips. So what are tips? So tips are a percent that you choose to pay to someone for the service they provide. So a lot of times when you go to restaurants and there is a waiter or waitress, you pay a tip to them. Commissions are different. So a commission is a percent that you make based on how much you sell. So those are the different types of percents that we're going to talk about today: tax, tip, and commission. All of the items above are usually determined using a percent. If you notice, all the definitions had percent in them. Just like any percent problem, there are several ways to solve them, but we are going to solve them using an equation. In each scenario below, we need to make sure we show our work and our thinking. Just like in all problems in math, we like to show our work. That way it's easy to tell where mistakes are or what's happened, different things like that. All right, so remember, all percent problems can be turned into a sentence like this. You've been doing this in the last section and now in this section. So it can be turned into a number is this much percent of another number. We're going to do the same thing with our tax, tips, and commission problems. We also want to make sure we are keeping track of what we are comparing and how the amounts and percents are changing. This will help us better understand how percents work, and it will help us with more difficult problems. So let's go through a couple of examples. This will help us understand what we're talking about and doing. So our first example says a car costs $3,900. Sales tax is 6.85%. Don't forget, with money, we round to the nearest cent. So we'll round to the hundredths place. All right, so the first question is, what is the price of the car? So that comes from right up here. It tells us in our problem that the car costs $3,900. This problem is a tax problem. Remember, in this section we're focusing on tax, tips, and commission. So this is a tax problem. So part B says the tax is, we're looking for our percent, so it tells us up here in our problem that tax is 6.85% of the cost of our car, which is $3,900. So in this section, in part B, we're actually going to figure out what the tax is. So let's turn this sentence into a mathematical sentence. So our tax, which is what we're looking for, is, remember that's a key word that we're going to put our equal sign. With percentages, we always want to have them in decimal form. So there's two ways that you can get it into decimal form. You can divide by 100, or you can move your decimal 2 to the left. So we're going to move our decimal 2 to the left. So that gives our tax in decimal form is 0.0685 of, so we're going to multiply it by 3,900. All right, and then you can type that in your calculator, and it should give you that the tax is $267.15. So we figured out what the tax was for our car. Part C says, what will the total cost be? So we know the initial cost of the car was $3,900, so we need to actually add that to our tax. So when you add $267.15 to 3,900, the total cost ends up being $4,167.15. Now let's look at this other side over here. Part A, it says this would be represented by, so the price of the car is represented by 100%. That's how much we're going to pay is 100%. So the tax, we know the tax. The percentage for the tax is given to us in the problem, and also we wrote it again in part B here. It's 6.85%. So part C, the total percent would be this 4,167.15 is 106.85%. To get that, all we have to do is add part A and part B together to get our total percent. All right, let's look at another example here. So example 2, this time we're going to look at a tip. In example 1, we looked at tax. So now we'll figure out a tip. So you plan to pay a 15% tip on a bill of $24.95. So it wants to know what the original price is. This is the price that we pay before we actually pay a tip. So our original price was the price of the bill, which is $24.95. And I'm going to fill in this right-hand column as we go. So this would be represented by 100%. That's if we paid the full bill, it's 100%. All right, so part B, we're going to turn our tip into a sentence. So the tip is blank percent. The percent comes up from our problem up here is 15% of what our initial bill was. So of our $24.95. So again, the tip, 15%, that's given to us in the problem right there. And we can also see it in this part of our part B. All right, let's figure out how much the tip would actually be. So let's turn this sentence into a mathematical equation. So we've got our tip is, remember, we're going to put an equal sign when we see the word is. 15%, let's change that to a decimal. So our decimal point would be at the end of 15 here. So we can move it 2 to the left. So our tip in decimal form is 0.15. And then we multiply it by our $24.95. This will tell us how much of the tip, or how much we would pay for a tip. All right, so if you put in your calculator 0.15 parenthesis 24.95 parenthesis, you should get that your tip is $3.74. Remember, we want to round to the nearest cent with these because it's money and it makes sense to round to the nearest cent. All right, so that's our tip price. Part C says, what is the new price? So we want to take our tip price plus the price of our original bill, which was $24.95. All right, so when you add those two together, you should get that the new price, the total that you end up paying, is $28.69. All right, so the total percent. Again, we're going to add part A and part B. They paid the 100% of the original bill, and then they also paid the 15% of the tip, so they ended up paying 115% total. All right, so it says we'll do the self-assessment and then we'll do problem 1. So go ahead and do the self-assessment. Self-assess how you feel on, you can compute tax and tip. Tax and tips are very similar. We just take the original price, find the percentage, and then we add that, whatever that percentage total is, to the original price to get our new price. All right, let's look at number 1 here on your worksheet. So let's read the instructions first. It says find the tax on each item and find the total cost. So we're going to find the tax first, and then we're going to find the total cost. And then it tells us to round to the nearest penny if necessary. Again, we're dealing with money, so we want to round to the nearest cent. All right, part 1 says the price of an office chair was $86. The tax rate was 6%. So it wants to know the old price, and what it means by the old price is just the original. So the original price of the office chair is $86. And the old percent, that just is similar to the notes. So with the office chair, if we're going to buy the whole chair, we're going to pay 100%. The next part is tax. So the tax is 6%. So that's our percent change. We're going to increase it by 6%. So remember, tax is, so we always do our equal sign. We want our percent in decimal form, so we move our decimal 2 to the left. So in decimal form, 6% is 0.06. And then we multiply it by our original value, which is $86. Okay, now we can type that in our calculator. When you type that in your calculator, 0.06 parentheses 86.00 parentheses, you should get that the tax for this chair is $5.16. Again, we're rounding to the nearest cent if we need to. All right, so that's our tax. We want to figure out our new price. So that's our old price plus our tax. So we're going to add our tax plus our original price, which was $86. So if you add those two together, you should get $91.16. So our new percent, we take the chair at the value of 100%, add our tax value, which is 6%. So 100 plus 6 is 106%. So very similar, your assignment will be very similar to your notes, it's just worded a little bit differently.